All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the very first Eighth Wall live learning session. This is a brand new weekly series where we invite our developer community to come join us for an interactive session of tips, tricks, and updates related to Eighth Wall webAR development. In each session, we're going to be talking about what's new at Eighth Wall to keep you up to date with the latest news and announcements, sample projects, things like that. Then we're going to dive into a relevant demo or topic, and we'll wrap things up with some live Q&A. So while we go through our content today, we want this to be interactive. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A section of the Zoom meeting here and ask your questions as we go. But before we begin, just want to do a couple of quick introductions. My name is Tony. I'm the Director of Technical Operations here at Eighth Wall, and I'm joined by Rigel, who's our lead product designer. For those of you who have who already belong to our public developer Slack, which has almost 3,000 members at this time, we're the same Tony and Rigel that you've been chatting with for quite some time now. So between the two of us, we've worked with thousands of webAR developers, and the goal here in today's session is really to pass along some of the tips and tricks we've learned along the way, and to allow you to ask questions. So we really value the feedback of our clients and our developer community. So if you have feature requests, issues, feedback, please do reach out to us anytime. So with that, I'd like to start today's live learning session by turning things over to Rigel, and he's going to give a quick update. What's new with Eighth Wall here?
Cool. Take over real quick.
Sure.
Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Sure can.
Great. Hi, everybody. I wanted to bring your attention to a new sort of capability that we're highlighting. Last week in celebration of Halloween, we launched a new sample project that shows you how to do curved image targets with SLAM tracking simultaneously. Now, this capability has been available for flat image target tracking for quite a while. And in fact, we actually have a sample project for that too. But as our software suite grows and we have more capabilities, it's always cool to come back and kind of highlight these different tricks you can do. So I want to talk for a moment about what that looks like. So on the right here, you can see this looping video of sort of a few different ways you can combine these ideas. What is unique about Eighth Wall and our webAR platform is we have multiple types of tracking, and you can turn them on and off at will and at runtime even. And so you can do pretty interesting effects. And one of the really cool things about combining image targets with world tracking is creating like a relationship between an object and the nearest surface that object is approaching. So you can see in the first clip with the guy that's like hanging on to the side of the cup, where actually there's a proximity trigger that initiates whenever the track 3D object gets close. That actually activates the animation to fire. And then one thing that also sort of strings each of these together is this concept of always knowing where the image target is in world space. And so we can copy the position of wherever that image target is and then apply things to it. So we can spawn primitives where it is, and then you can see when the balls fall out of the cup, those primitives are spawned inside the cup, and then now they respond to physics. They're no longer bound to the image target, and they exist in the world around you. And so there's a lot of really interesting things you can do with this. So we have on our blog, if you go to eighthwall.com, at the bottom there's a place where you can reach our blog on Medium. We have a whole blog post that I wrote that outlines all these different techniques. In fact, other examples of using image targets in SLAM, mixing and matching flat and curved image targets. So be sure to go check out that blog. And then in addition to that, we have new to the project library, this project you can see here with the pumpkins. You can actually go and read through this, check out the code, see kind of like what we're doing here to make this all work. You can clone it into your own workspace. So yeah, I look forward to seeing people try out this new capability. Thanks.
Oh, I was muted. Thanks, Rigel. Let me go and share my screen again, and we're going to jump into some of the content here today. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to take you through a number of live demonstrations. I can put this in. There we go. Anyway, what we're going to do is since this is our first live learning session, I'm going to start a little bit at the beginning, but we're going to go through a lot of content here in a pretty short amount of time. We're going to go through the kind of the end-to-end process of developing with the 8th Wall Cloud Editor. We're going to show you how to do things like 3D model placement, deal with animations, gesture controls. I'm going to add some image targets to a SLAM-based experience. We have both image target and SLAM going at the same time. We'll add some media recorder components and add photo and video capture capability. And then we'll also talk about, the source control and the publishing capability. So we're going to, do this all, in our session here today, and show you how you can kind of combine these things together. But, before I jump into the demo itself, Rigel mentioned the project library. I do want to highlight this once again, where, this project library is a really great place to get started. There are, around 50 or so sample projects for lots of the different types of use cases. Now, this is by no means a full set of what you can do, but if you're looking at things like, how to deal with animations or capturing photos, dealing with image targets or green screen video, we have a lot of great starting points. So you don't have to start from scratch. So in the demo here today, I'm actually going to be starting with what we call our A-frame placeground example. Now, what's nice about the project library is for all of these projects, you can see a little animated GIF preview. They all have READMEs that give more information about kind of what's going on behind the scenes. You can view all of the source code for these projects. You can, if you have an 8th Wall account, you can clone this template into your project. But also, if you want to test it out before you start to clone it and start to work with any of the code, you can simply click try it out. And then if you're on a mobile device, it'll take you directly to the experience. If you're on your desktop here, then it'll generate a QR code that you can scan with your phone. So essentially what we're going to do in today's demo is we're going to start with this placeground example where we can spawn 3D models in the space around me. But we're going to do a number of steps of building block steps to enhance this and make it even more interesting. So we're going to swap out for different 3D models. We're going to go ahead and add some animations to the 3D models. Next, there's another tab where we have this manipulate project. I'm going to take some of the pieces of this. We're going to add gesture controls so that I can interact with all of the 3D models that I'm spawning. Then I'll add in some image targets. We're going to place another 3D model over an image target. And last but not least, we're going to add in some of the photo and video capture elements. So we're going to be able to do all of these things in one project here. So let's jump right in. I'm going to bring up a couple of windows here so you can kind of follow along and see what I'm doing. So, okay. So I'm in the Cloud Editor and I've created a new project. And in this case, I cloned that A-frame placeground example where I can spawn some trees. So if I click here, I can see my assets. I have my tree asset. I can preview it here, rotate it around, and I can see what's going on. Now, in head.html, this is where you can include meta tags to pull in some of the 8th Wall related libraries like the A-frame library, as well as our XR Extras package. And XR Extras provides a lot of really important functionality, from things like loading screens and almost there workflows, but it also contains a lot of predefined components for dealing with image targets and animations and videos and interactions. So this is in all of your projects by default. Definitely take advantage of what's there, and we'll dive into this a little bit deeper here. Then we've got app.js, which is like our main starting point. This is where I'm importing some of my JavaScript files, and I'm registering a custom A-frame component to tap to place my content, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then I've got body.html, where this is an A-frame based project. So I basically have an HTML page where I can define my assets. So I've got my scene. The XR web component here is what's adding, basically turning on 8th Wall, if you will, and adding the AR functionality to the A-frame scene. I've got some assets. I've got a camera. I've got a couple of lights, and I have a ground object that we're going to use to tap against to spawn our 3D models. And our tap place component is pretty simple. Basically, what it's doing is it's adding a click event listener on the ground, and whenever I tap, on the ground. It's doing a raycast, and it's going to spawn a new 3D model. So let's see what that looks like, at the beginning, and then we'll build upon it, as I mentioned here. So first thing I'm going to do is just click preview, and I'm going to bring up the camera on my device and scan the QR code. And this is going to take me directly to my private development URL for the project that I'm working on. So I can see this, and you can see the preview here, and it's quite simple. I tap on the ground, it spawns these trees. They kind of animate and scale in, and it's a pretty simple project here first. So Thanksgiving in the US is coming up pretty shortly. So, let's mix this up a little bit. I've been using this tree 3D model. I've got a 3D model of a turkey. I'm just going to take this asset and I'm going to drag it here as an asset in the cloud editor. And we can go ahead and click on this, and let's zoom in and preview. And here you can see I've got this this turkey 3D model, and we're going to first thing we're going to do is swap that out. So there we go. So I've got that in there. We're going to go and just update this asset. So this is where I'm loading the 3D model, and I'm going to change it from tree to turkey.glb, and we're simply going to save and build. And this is rebuilding my project with my very slightly updated code. And what's nice about this is it's going to automatically reload my phone. I didn't have to manually do that. And now I have this updated experience, right? So I'm going to now tap, and I've got my new 3D model. And this is a little bit more interesting, but we still have a lot to do here to kind of polish this even more. So I've got the the turkey model, but this 3D model has animations, right? So we want to bring that into the experience. So I'm going to switch tabs here. One thing that's really handy in dealing with 3D models, like you can preview them in the editor, but also if you want to see what a 3D model is going to look like, you also have this, I pull up Don McCurdy's GLTF viewer here all the time, and I can see that I've got actually a number of different animation clips here. And I've got, roll, and I've got walk, and we've got idle. And we want to, have these animations play when the 3D model is loaded. So let me just close this tab here. And what we're going to do next is we're going to go back, and to do this, we're going to leverage A-Frame's animation mixer component. And the animation mixer it's not part of base A-Frame, so I'm going to add a script tag here to the top that's going to pull in the A-Frame extras library, and that's providing the animation mixer component. Now, what I'm going to do is here. So I'm going to update the tap place component. And again, this is basically when I click on the ground, it's creating a new element. It's getting the touch point on the plane in front of me. It's then, once the 3D model loads in, it's going to animate. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add another line. And after it animates, or after it loads in, we're going to add an animation. So I'm just going to do some copying and pasting here, save me some typing. And we're going to say new element dot set attribute. And we are going to say animation mixer, and we'll do clip. We'll play the idle clip because that's one of the ones we saw in the previewer, and we're going to adjust the speed of it later. So I'm going to set time scale to 1. So there we go. So now I'm going to go ahead and save and build this once again. This is going to kick off a new build, and once I spawn this in, okay, so reloading the page right now, and now I have all my turkeys, and when they place, after they load in and animate, then it's kicking off this idle animation. And it's a little fast, so maybe we'll change the speed. We'll maybe make this like 0.75 or something to that effect. Nope. Click on the right window here, 0.75. Okay, so just by adding that, 2 lines, a script tag in the head of the page, and I'm adding one more attribute on the entity that I'm creating, which is the 3D model when I'm spawning it, now I have this animation. I could have picked any of the animations that this thing had. So that's great, but now I want to be able to interact with these 3D models, and let's make it so I can drag and I can move them around. So this goes back to the XR Extras library. So we have a lot of pre-baked components that you can use, and some of these deal with touch gestures. So I'm going to go back into body, And the first thing that I'm going to add is I'm going to add the XR Extras gesture detector. So this can detect a lot of different gestures like hold drag, pinch to zoom, one finger, two finger swipe, a lot of those different types of interactions. So I'm going to say XR Extras gesture detector. Make sure I have that spelled right. Okay, great. So we've got that. And now what we want to do is when the 3D model is added, I want to make it interactable. So I'm going to add a new line here, and we're going to add another attribute to our 3D model. So I'm going to say new element, and I'm going to add a class, and we're going to say can tap, right? And we're adding this can tap class because of our camera, and it's basically we have a raycaster, and we can interact with the objects that have this can tap class. So we add that so that we can basically, it'll recognize a tap on the 3D model that we're adding here. So I've got that, and then we're going to do another new element, that attribute, and we're going to say XR Extras. We want to be able to hold and drag and slide it along. And there we go. So I've added the can tap class, I've added the XR Extras hold drag, and let's build this once again. So again, it's going to kick off a new build in the cloud of my project. Once that's completed, it's going to hot reload my device. And now I've got an updated experience. I've got these turkeys. And now when I hold my finger and drag, see, I can slide them along the surface, and I can move them around anywhere that I like. So now we're getting places. So now we have object placement, we have animations, we have interaction, and this is all really starting to come together here. So let's take that even further. So now what I want to do is I want to make it so when we tap on one of these 3D models, I want to change animations. I want to change from the idle animation to like the peck animation or one of the other ones that are built into this 3D model. So let's add that. And we're gonna, again, what we're basically gonna do here is just add a click event listener that is going to change the animation clip that the animation mixer component is playing. So I'm gonna say add event listener and click, okay. And here we go, okay. So basically when we click on this new element, I'm gonna actually copy and paste this animation mixer line because it's pretty much doing exactly what I already want. And we are gonna change it from the idle clip to the peck clip, how about? And maybe we can, I can adjust the time scale if I want these things to be a little bit faster or slower. So now I've got that. Okay, once again, let's save and build. And this is showing you how that we can take little pieces from different projects that we're interested in and really combine them all into one and really get a customized project exactly as we want it. So again, here, now I can tap and I can place my objects. I can still drag them around, but now let's tap on one of the objects and see when I tap on the turkey, now it changes the animation and it's pecking once I tap on it. Okay. Great. So we have this markerless experience. The next thing I want to do is let's add another 3D model, and let's have that 3D model get triggered using an image target. Okay, so I'm going to take a piece from a different sample project, which is basically the jellyfish flyer, and we're going to go here and we're going to add a new image target. So as Rigel mentioned, we support different types of image targets: flat and curved, meaning cylindrical or conical. In this case, let's just go with a flat image target. I'm going to take my image called model target and drag and drop and upload it. I can preview it. We'll click next. And here I can set the tracking region. So if I had an image that had a lot of like dead space or white space around the outside, I can kind of zoom in and select the area that has the most visual detail that I want to use for tracking. So let's go ahead and click on that. Click create. Okay, so I've got my model target. I can scan this QR code to preview it. I highly suggest you do so, but for the sake of time, we're just gonna proceed here and click close and go back to the project. So now I have another 3D model of the jellyfish, and we're gonna drag this in and add it to our project. Okay, and we can preview this, of course, in the previewer. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add this 3D model. So let's just, to save time here, I'm going to copy and paste this other line where it loads the turkey 3D model. And we're going to call this jelly-glb. And my asset here is jellyfish-model.glb. And I'm basically going to add, here, I'm just going to paste this in for right now, but we're going to put this down here at the bottom. And we're going to add in the XR Extras named image target component. So this image target is going to, or this entity is going to be triggered on the image target called model target. And when I uploaded that image, the name of the image target was called model target. Now I have a child entity, and this is going to be the 3D model. So this is our jelly GLB, and I've added the XR Extras one finger rotate so that I can just swipe with one finger and rotate this. So basically the 3D model is a child of the image target entity so that it can be positioned or rotated or move independently. So let's go ahead and save and build. Now I'm also going to bring up the model target here. Let's bring that up here. Oh, it's on the wrong screen. Let me move this up for you. Okay, so again, we now still have our markerless tracking with our 3D models that I can move around and I can animate. I can tap to change animations, but I also now can trigger the 3D model. I can interact with this by swiping with one finger, so I'm rotating this in real time. And of course, I have both a marker and a markerless experience at the same time. Okay. So the last thing we're going to do now that we have all these different pieces together is let's add the ability to do photo and video capture. So I'm going to add another XR Extras component. I'm going to add the XR Extras capture button. Okay. And I'm going to add the XR Extras capture preview. So this provides the button that enables a capture, and then also once it's been captured, it can preview it for me. So let's just do one more save and build. And once that's finished, it's going to reload my device once again. And here we go. So great, now I have this media recorder capture button at the bottom of the screen. You can see that circle. Again, I can tap with the model, I can drag them around, I can still move them. Let's start recording. So I'm gonna hold my finger to capture a video. I've got the image target triggering another 3D model, and let go, and it's gonna process the video and bring it up, and I can preview this here. There we go, got a preview, I can save it, and I can share it out with my friends. So finally, now that we have this project in a state where I'm happy with this, where we've got the 3D model that I want with the animations that I want, I can interact with this, I can trigger additional content on an image target, I can tap to change animation clips, I can capture a video or a photo. Now I want to save all these changes and check them into the integrated source control that the 8th Wall Cloud Editor provides. So what I'm going to do here is click Land. So I have all these changes in my local branch. I'm going to click Land, and this is essentially, think of like checking this into your master branch. I can see the changes. I've added a model, a couple of models, the jellyfish and the turkey. I can see a diff of what I changed, what I added or removed. Red is what was taken out, what was before. Green is what's new. So I can see all these changes. I'm going to give it a descriptive name, and we'll say, lots of changes here today. So let's just go with that. And we're going to land this. So this is going to now save all my changes, check it into source control so that, if Rigel logs in and he's working on my project, he can click the sync button here at the top of the screen. And, then he can see and sync and look at all the changes that I've made, and he can build off of that. So you can see here that you can see a history of the different changes. So I first cloned it from the Placeground example. We made lots of changes. I can view them here. But the next step is I want to actually publish this so that it's available to be viewed, by everybody. So all of you out there can test this out if you like as well. So I'm going to click Publish. And by default, you have the ability to publish this to either a password protected staging URL, a public URL, or both. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just push this to the public URL. You can see the URL. In this case, our workspace is called Live. live.8thwall.app, and this project is called session 1 here for today. Now you get these URLs by default, but you also have the ability to connect your own custom domain or subdomain. So if I want, ar.mycompany.com, I can connect that. We'll probably go through that in a different live learning session here, not today, but we will cover those types of topics as well. So I'm going to push this and publish this version of the code to the public URL. And here we go. So now it's been published. If I just want to click on this, it's actually going to bring it up on my browser. Since this is a world tracking or SLAM-based device, the XR Extras library is going to detect that I'm on a desktop, generate this QR code. And any of you on the session here today, if you like, you can scan this QR code and see what I've built in the past 10 or so minutes. So again, just to kind of recap, we took one of the sample projects, we swapped out one 3D model for another. We added animations, we added gesture controls, we added click event handling to change animation states. We added an image target that spawns a 3D model, and then we added video recording. Finally, we went through and landed our changes into source control and then published them to 8th Wall's global CDN with the click of a button. So, that kind of concludes the demo portion here of our first live learning session. I guess at this point, let's just open it up for general Q&A. So let's stop sharing my screen for a moment and let's take a look at some of the questions. Or Rigel, anything you want to add? You're muted.
Yeah, so I just answered one of the questions,
Okay.
but we can talk about it. So the question is, we have an app that lets users create content. Is it possible that users can push experiences with 3 parameters, model, asset, animation, sound, into a project that users can share in webAR? And I kind of gave 2 different examples of like how this could work. So the first would be if you're using self-hosting, you could generate like a templated app elsewhere. And for every user that uses your creation app, they would then add their assets, whatever they might be. And then, whenever they hit publish, right, on your backend, you could generate a new website at your root domain and then include those new models and assets and then send back the link. So we've actually seen this already done with customers like Torch, where they had an app you could create little AR scenes and then publish these things instantly using 8th Wall. And then the other one, which could be interesting, I haven't seen this done before, but where if you're using Cloud Editor to host, you would create like your root app, your templated app, and then on your backend, when someone uploads a new 3D model, maybe it has like a hash associated with that then gets passed in as a URL parameter to that project. And then that URL parameter is the thing that goes right at the end of your URL that like your Cloud Editor project can read. And then it would then take that and then pass that in as a, as part of the, URL to fetch the model. And then if it exists, right, then it can return the correct model from your servers. Then all you have to worry about is just uploading and hosting the 3D models and assets.
Yeah, absolutely. No, those are great strategies. Also, we have an A-frame React project that's in the project library. And you can do like this one is using different React routes where if I have different paths after the project, like I can say /purple or /yellow or /red. And that can, you can use that to make decisions as to what gets displayed and when. So you could have different things like that. So let me just share my screen and show you kind of which project I'm looking at here if you want to see more information here. So that is this one. So hopefully everybody can see that. But yeah, it's the A-frame React project. You can kind of see how that works, where there's just a simple menu, you click on it, but ultimately that takes you to like a slightly different path that has, in this case, it's very simple with just a different colored cube, but same kind of principle applies, and it could be like a different model, different sound, different image target, and you can go from there. So you might want to take a look at that one as well.
And this will be available as a recording. We're recording right now, so you'll be able to watch this later. We'll get back to you on how exactly we're going to do that, but yeah, we're recording this.
Okay, great. Yeah, we have another question about what can I use to create an asset to be scanned and used? it says, I currently use Adobe Illustrator and Cinema 4D. So 8th Wall's AR engine has been integrated with, the leading WebGL frameworks like A-Frame, 3JS, Babylon.js, PlayCanvas, and Sumerian. And these WebGL frameworks, they have support for lots of different types of 3D models. But that said, if you actually look at their documentation, most all of them recommend that you get your assets in GLB or GLTF. GLB is binary GLTF. If you go to 8thwall.com/GLB, we've got some tips and links to best practices as well as converter tools. If you want to take, let's say, an FBX or an OBJ that you already have and you want to convert it into GLB, that's the best format for your 3D models in webAR. So that's what we were dealing with today. The tree, the turkey, those were the jellyfish. Those were GLB or binary GLTF 3D models. As far as when you say create an asset to be scanned, I assume that you mentioned like that's maybe the image target or the trigger. So again, you can have different types of experiences. You can, in the demo today, I showed you a markerless experience at first where I'm just placing my 3D models onto a surface. So you could certainly do that. Then we used a flat image target to trigger a different 3D model and anchor the jellyfish to the image, the 2D image of the jellyfish. That's another approach. You can anchor your content to a surface, to an image target, and that could be a flat, or it could be a curved image target, conical or cylindrical. So those are a couple different approaches.
And if you're talking about like holograms or volumetric video, there are like formats that exist like in our you can go through our project library, and we have HCAP is a file format that we have a sample project for, and there's many other types, even like depth kit, and many of them have their own proprietary formats. But really, it's like if they have a web player and they can exist in a WebGL context, then you can play those back as well.
Cool. Rigel, we have another question. What's the best way to optimize 3D assets for AR? I think we talked about that and getting them to GLBs.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
I mean, sort of like as a quick overview of ways to improve performance with your 3D models in webAR, a lot of the same principles apply to if you were making a mobile app, an AR app. One of the biggest factors is texture size. And many of the techniques that if you're familiar with, technical art techniques from game design and game development, texture atlasing, there's all kinds of different ways you can compress these things now. We have this thing called Draco compression, which is really helpful for mesh compression, and that can be used with GLB. Reducing your total number of vertices helps, but really it's you're probably going to run out of memory before you'll see frame rate drops due to geometry. So texture size is really critical. What sort of texture sizes can you get away with? It's actually a lot more forgiving than I think you'd expect. A lot of Unity projects, if you go and look at the Unity documentation, a lot of those parameters still apply to web. So, don't be adding anything over 4K, for instance, if you're making a mobile app, and you wouldn't do this in a website either.
And just a follow-up question on that, Rigel, there's a question about like sizes for like volumetric capture sequences. And again, it's, when you're dealing with the HCAPs and other volumetric, a lot of these are quite large and they're streaming assets. So again, you want to work with your capture provider to, again, optimize it and get it as small as you can, right? You probably don't want to have a 2 gigabyte, streaming asset, because if somebody's not on Wi-Fi, that could eat through a big chunk of their data plan. So again, just web best practices apply, keep things as small as you possibly can, just so that you for a lot of different reasons.
You'll probably find that you can actually get away with a lot more technically before you start having to ask questions about like what Tony's saying about data plans for end users. We can technically continue to stream volumetric data sort of indefinitely, and you can rack up many gigabytes from a website, which most people probably would not expect. So even though it's playing back perfectly fine, just be cognizant of like, what that's actually doing to the end user's device.
Mm-hmm. We have a question about the media recorder and saving of the video and saved to files. So um, that is how it works currently in the current versions of iOS. You can save it to the Files app. You can't just hold and press and save the video to your camera roll, for example. But um, hopefully soon, iOS Safari will support the Web Share API level 2. It's actually in iOS right now, but it's buried and it's turned off by default. So if you actually go into settings and then Safari and then advanced and then experimental features and scroll through that entire list, there you can turn on Web Share API level 2. And if you do that, after you capture the video, you're gonna see a share button at the bottom right of the screen. And on a lot of Android devices like that do support that API in the browser, that will just be there automatically. So when you click that share button, that opens up the native share sheet, and then you can share it with, let's say, messages or save it. You have a lot more options there. So hopefully that will be turned on by default soon, maybe in the next update to iOS 14, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
We filed some requests with the WebKit team to have it on by default because it's there and it works great. We want to get that functionality accessible to everybody. So for now, you save it to the Files app, but once WebShare API level 2 gets turned on, then our XR extras and our tech already detects that and handles it, and will provide the user with an enhanced share flow, basically.
Totally. And just to add to that, whenever that download button, whenever you tap that, you hit download, we have that shortcut down there that appears that takes you to the Files app to then save it to your gallery or pull up a share sheet. But remember, it also saves into the downloads bucket in the top right corner of your address bar. So, and all of this is, part of XR Extras, which is, open source and fully modifiable. So, if a client is asking, well, I just want the point and arrow up in the top right corner, or, I want to give instructions as to how to save this, or, all of this can be changed by you at any point in time at your discretion.
Absolutely. Let's see, a question about URL parameters. We have a mobile app. Okay, so just webAR with apps. You can bring up webAR experiences inside an app using a web view, but there are some gotchas that you need to be aware of. The first is, if this is an iOS app, there are two different types of web views currently. One works with webAR, one doesn't work with webAR. So there's the legacy WK web view, and that web view doesn't have camera access. So unfortunately, in that case, we have compatibility checks that would say, oh, you're almost there, and you would have to either copy the link, or if there's the three-dot menu at the top, we can point a little arrow that says open in Safari, and it would take you directly out to the app. Now, if your iOS app is using the newer SF Safari view controller, starting with iOS 13, that web view gained camera access, which has been great because a lot of apps like Twitter and Slack and Discord, they were already using this particular type of web view. But once iOS 13 came out, now webAR just magically started working inside those apps without having to actually go out to Safari. So same idea. In your Android app, you would have a web view, and you need to make sure that this web view is configured with the proper permissions. And if you look at our docs, basically in order for 8th Wall to work, we require 3 to 4 features in the browser. Basically, we require WebAssembly, WebGL, get user media, which is camera. And then if you're doing a world tracking based experience, it also needs device orientation, which is basically the gyro. If you're doing a face or an image target only, you wouldn't need that sensor, but you need to make sure that your Android web view is configured to enable access to those features. And if so, then 8th Wall webAR experiences will work inside that web view, and you can access that page like you would any other page. You can pass URL parameters, however you want to drive people to that URL in the web view, you have that ability.
Here's a question from Randall asking if AWS GovCloud works for hosting.
We don't have anything running specifically in AWS GovCloud, but if you were setting up your own, you can self-host an experience. You can self-host your HTML and CSS and JavaScript and your 3D models and things like that. But when you load the page, it still does need to pull down the 8th wall AR engine from our CDN. So you can't self-host the AR engine. And if you look at some of the like self-hosted examples on GitHub, you'll see like a script tag for apps.8thwall.com, and you pass your app key. Like, you still do need to be able to access that.
Instead of Sumerian. So
I'm not sure what instead of Sumerian means, but
you can talk a little bit about like the different frameworks we support within Cloud Editor, right?
Yeah. So in Cloud Editor, you can basically build basically everything but Play Canvas and Sumerian projects, because they provide their own editor that you would log in, and you would create they're kind of Unity-like views, and you would build your AR experience in there, and you would add your script tags and your code to add 8th wall into that project. You can take a look at some of the documentation, the samples for that. So when you're using the Cloud Editor, that would be for like A-Frame, 3JS, Babylon.js type projects.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, we are, I think, right on schedule. We're 2 minutes early. A lot of great questions up. One late breaking question is using the Cloud Editor requirement. So it is not required. We definitely recommend it, just because we've built in a lot of great functionality that honestly makes it a lot easier to develop webAR. You can build, you saw today, you can preview your experiences. We wirelessly stream the logs from the end devices into the browser, so you don't have to connect your USB cable and open up like separate Safari or Chrome debuggers. It's got integrated source control. It's got push button CDN publishing. You can connect custom domains. So it's taken a lot of the work out of what would typically be manual steps of like setting up web servers and generating SSL certificates and all that. But that said, you don't have to. The Cloud Editor and the 8th wall hosting are tightly coupled together. So when you build in the Cloud Editor, it gets published to our global CDN. If you want to self-host, you can look at, we have a GitHub repo with some self-hosted examples. You could then use whatever, code editor tools you like Sublime Text or VS Code or whatever, your own source control, your own web servers, you can do all of that. You would have to whitelist, the web server where you're going to be hosting the self-hosted experience. That's really to protect you and your app key, so people can't inspect your HTML source, grab your app key, and then use it other places. So great. As far as there's a last question here about any new features or upcoming functionality, I'd say just stay tuned for updates. We're announcing updates all the time. We're going to have weekly sessions here. Each week we're going to talk about kind of what's new. But that's about all I can share for today. So
yeah, and one thing we might want to highlight too is we listen to feedback and
absolutely.
requests, and most of the features actually that you see in our product today came from questions and requests from customers early on. So yeah, I think we might talk about the Slack channel in a second, but we have lots of avenues for you to request features, and we take those requests to heart, and you may see them appear in future product releases.
So excellent. Well, we're just at the end of our session here for today. So I want to thank everyone for their time joining us here today. Hopefully it was helpful. You learned some new things today, and we appreciate all the great questions and the interactions. So again, we're going to have another session like this next week. Stay tuned for further updates, other additional demos. Definitely, if you're not already a member, please do join our developer Slack. Just go to 8thwall.com/Slack. Join the almost 3,000 members that are there. It's a great place to be. Ask questions, show what you built, and we look forward to hearing from you. We look forward to seeing what you've been building with 8th wall, and we'll talk to you next time.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.